Hello and welcome. I am Cyril Stover. Now, providing access to safe and sufficient water resources to meet the social, cultural and economic needs of Nigeria is the vision of the Federal Ministry of Water Resources. Now, in pursuing this goal, the ministry aims at enhancing public health, food security, poverty alleviation, while maintaining the integrity of the country's freshwater ecosystems. Now, at the helm of affairs of the ministry in the 6 years of the Buhari administration so far is a civil engineer with some 3 decades of experience in both the private and public sectors. Suleiman Hussaini Adamu, Fellow of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, Fellow of the Nigerian Academy of Engineering, member of the American Society of Civil Engineers, and a member of COREN, that's the Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria. He joins me to assess the impact of the Water Resources Ministry under the Buhari administration. Minister, welcome to One on One.
Thank you, Cyril.
Right. At the start of this administration which you serve, there was a commitment to addressing the numerous problems faced by the Nigerian society, and one of them, of course, very important, water resources. Now, take us through how you assessed the problems and challenges at that time, and how you started addressing them.
Well, I think 3 weeks after coming into office, I organized a retreat and invited many key stakeholders in the water resources sector so that we could sit down and assess the sector as it was then and to chart a way forward. And by the end of that 2-3 day retreat, we had come out with what we call roadmap, Water Resources Roadmap 2016 to 2030. Under the roadmap, we looked at issues like policy issues like the water bill, the water resources policy and the irrigation policy, that we had to deal with that. We looked at the issue of water supply and sanitation. We looked at, we had a plan for revitalizing the river basins. We looked at also issues that had to do with irrigation, hydropower development, and also alternative sources of funding. And then, of course, transboundary water issues like Lake Chad and the Niger Basin Authority. So we had this agenda also anchored around the Sustainable Development Goals, the Water Resources Master Plan. So we had we came up with a tripod to deal with the SDGs on one leg, the Water Resources Master Plan and the roadmap itself. But the roadmap was aligned to both the SDGs and the Water Resources Master Plan. And since then, that's what we've been implementing. It's important to note that we could not look at 4 years or 8 years, but we looked at 15 years because the water sector is huge and it's organic and dynamic. It goes with issues that have to do with population growth. It goes with issues that have to do with like climate change and so on and so forth. So you cannot have a snapshot and say this in 4 years exactly this is what's going to happen. So things spill over, and that's why we took a 50-year horizon to deal with the situation to the year 2030, and coincidentally that is the end year for the Sustainable Development Goals. So we're working in tandem with that.
Now, situate this for us properly, if you will. Generally, when we talk about resources, especially water resources, and the citizen would think, well, this is all about an all-important commodity. Now, situate for us the position of the Federal Ministry of Water Resources vis-a-vis the position of states in the provision of water. especially the question of water supply?
Well, water is the concurrent list of the Constitution, but it has defined roles for the various tiers of government. For instance, at federal level, we deal with policy issues, we deal with international conventions and agreements, and we also deal with bulk water. That is to say, we support states in terms of provision of bulk water because that's the most costly aspect, like building of dams and so on. The states on their part are responsible for treating water, transmitting and distributing and billing and so on and so forth, along with the local governments. That's the way it's supposed to be, ideally. And that is why states have water boards and the federal government does not.
Right.
So, if the problem being faced regarding water supply is that states over time have not been investing as they should, and also commensurate with the rising population. There is no alignment between the population and the water supply infrastructure. Of course, there are other challenges: capacity building, high cost of water infrastructure, energy crisis, and so on. But it's all about planning. It's all about prioritization. If there is a political will to address the water issue, I think it's something that states can do. After all, years ago, state governments were the one providing all the infrastructure, but most of the infrastructure that you see for water supply, especially in urban areas, are schemes that were built 30, 40 years ago. And since then, there hasn't been much investment by other states to move in tandem with the population growth. You have to plan for the future. They don't do that. And therefore, you find out that most urban schemes are for populations that are like 40 years ago, the numbers that are 40 years ago, providing water for a population of today, and with dilapidated infrastructure as well, because even the existing schemes have not been operated fairly. Today, our statistics show that about most of our water schemes in urban areas are operating at about 40% and below installed capacity. So there needs to be investment on the part of local state governments, and that hasn't been forthcoming. So a situation came whereby the federal government itself found itself also getting involved in provision of treatment plants, or almost providing entire schemes. But even then, we've been facing challenges. Some states cannot even manage it to operate and maintain, and it's not something that the federal government is cut for. So lots of challenges, but bottom line is, I think many states have not been prioritizing water, and it has not been something that they think is very important, probably because the water falls from the sky.
It's a tough call, isn't it? Seeing that at the end of the day, the federal government certainly would be judged by how much success it has achieved in the area of water resources management, and easily the first thing that will come to mind, rightly or wrongly, would be, well, did the citizens have access to safe and sustainable water supply? So how are you encouraging a turnaround?
Well, we're doing a lot. First of all, after we had a diagnostic report in 2017, which indicated that, especially for urban schemes, in 1992, 30% of the population was enjoying pipe-borne water, but by 2015, it had dropped to 7%. And that was a serious wake-up call for us. And that led us to develop the WASH Action Plan, Water Sanitation Hygiene Action Plan, which was launched by President Buhari on 8th November 2018. And in the course of that, he declared a state of emergency on the water, sanitation, hygiene sector. So that's number one, at least to kind of, highlight this problem. If people didn't know, now they know that there is a big problem associated with water. But even before then, we had, based on the Millennium Development Goals, we assessed the Millennium Development Goals and realized that we had only achieved 68% instead of 75% that we should achieve at that time, which MDGs ended in 2015. So at that time, only 68% of the population in Nigeria had access to water. But then, if you discretize it to look at the rural population, just 50% of the rural population had access to water. And that led us to, in 2016, introduce the Partnership for Expanded Water Supply, Sanitation and Hygiene Program, which was launched in November 2016 by the Vice President. The idea has been and still remains to incentivize the states to invest more in rural water supply. So far, as I'm talking to you now, we're working with 12 states. We did a pilot program in 2 states, Ogun and Kano, to test the program. After that, now we're working with 12 states. The idea is we're taking 2 local governments, and the states are taking 2 local governments, and we want to ensure that the rural populations of these 4 local governments have 100% access. So this another scheme that we try to introduce, basically a partnership between the states and local governments. Then, of course, even under the urban water supply, we created a new budget line to support states with the urban schemes. We launched the new National Water Resources Policy, which stipulates that the federal government can support states with up to 30% of the cost of urban schemes. And we've been, even some of our projects, our existing projects, we repackaged them and partnered with states. So they took a certain portion of the project, like Zobe water supply, like Zungeru Wushishi water project, like Ota water supply in Enugu. We're partnering with the state government. We took a certain portion, not necessarily on a 30-70 basis. In most cases, these projects are always on the 50-60 or 40-60 basis, you know. So we're doing those ones with those states. And then, you know, we are trying to sell this idea to the states also to corporatize their agencies. We're doing under what we call the Urban Water Sector Reform Program, which has just ended with the World Bank, to corporatize, to put new laws to make sure that their water corporations are working like commercial entities. They can do that so that they can achieve cost recovery and you know, kind of reduce the stress on their state budgets. And of recent, the most recent intervention we've done was we worked with the World Bank on the basis of the diagnostic report that I mentioned of 2017 and the WASH Action Plan. We've come up with a plan to support some states and the PWASH program with $700 million facility from the World Bank under what we call SOWASH, Sustainable Urban and Rural Water Sanitation and Hygiene Program, which was just approved last month by the World Bank. And then finally, in the controversial water bill, we have a clause, a provision for a WASH fund, Water Supplies, Water Sanitation and Hygiene Fund, that is supposed to provide for states to draw from, to be able also to invest more in the water supply, in their water supply and sanitation programs. So all the necessary incentives have been put in place. But the public needs to know that it is not the responsibility of the federal government to provide water in your households. That is the responsibility of the states, and that is why the federal government does not own a water board.
All right, we'll come back to the issue of the water bill later on, but let's just push it further on the WASH, Water Sanitation and Hygiene Program. The states, as you have also mentioned, are supposed to have domesticated these policies and keyed in. How would you assess the response so far?
Encouraging. As a last count, we had about 24 states out of 36 that have keyed in. Although they are moving very slowly, it has taken time from 2018 to date. But every time I have an opportunity to talk to the state governors, I remind them. I've been able to address them at the Governors Forum. I've addressed them under the auspices of National Economic Council. But you know, it's an issue of prioritization and political will.
Yes, but citizens would say this is a matter of the welfare of the citizens, health, hygiene, sanitation, and ordinarily you would expect immediate and full domestication and keying in.
I think we've tried our best. We're giving all the incentives. Even this issue of the Southwest, the World Bank facility, there have been certain conditions that the states need to meet. And those that are very serious about, at least we've created the awareness. Now, we can't go and force the states to do what they do. I think citizens also have to do their own bit. And what I'm saying now about all this is for the citizens. I hope those that are listening to me and know that their states are lagging behind will question these things. But the Constitution is very clear. We cannot go and interfere or force state governments to do what they need to do. But we're also worried because at the end of the day, it's the Federal Ministry of Water Resources as an agency of the federal government that goes back to report to the United Nations about our progress in SDGs, that reports to the Sanitation and Water for All organization, all those organizations, UNICEF and so on, that we deal with. They all know the problem anyway. But I think we'll just have to continue to make the point. I've made this point that in Nigeria, people find it easier or more important to pay for telephone credit than to pay for water. And some state governments find it a lot better to build dual carriageways and street lights and airports at the expense of water. But we're making the case for water, and I hope that the states concerned, those that are lagging behind, will begin to have a turnaround. But we can only do advocacy.
Now, closely tied with hygiene would be the campaign against open defecation. I know you might look at the figures and say there's been progress, but we would ask, yes, in the year 2000, Nigeria was placed, according to the figures, about 6. All right. But we don't know exactly what the situation is today, but it's a matter that you'd squirm to talk about. Open defecation, you understand? Just one local government had been declared open defecation free, and we have 774.
Well, honestly, this is not a trophy Nigeria will be proud of, because we're #1 in the world today. India has exited, and they had a concrete plan and mobilized the entire country and was able to stop 600 million people from open defecation. We are trying our best. Like you rightly said, we started with one local government in 2017. We have 61 today. If not for the COVID lockdown, probably would have had more. I say it's progress, but I must be the first to admit that it's very slow progress. I would have expected us to be much up there by now. But I think we'll get there. I think the awareness is coming gradually, and the good thing is that the number of local governments that are becoming open defecation free now, the rate is coming faster than it was before. So, and at that time, when we started, we were looking at local governments as the political entities that we'll use as our yardstick, as our unit of measurement. But today we're reaching a point where we're likely to start looking at the first state that is open defecation free. So progress is being made. I know 2 states that at least half of the LGAs are already open defecation free. So we'll continue to work on that. I've set very ambitious targets for the Clean Nigeria campaign secretariat this year, this year in particular. They may not necessarily meet it, but I hope they will get close to it. Our target still remains to end open defecation in Nigeria by 2025. If India can move 600 million people out of that practice, I see no reason why we cannot move 47 million people when we started. The recent WASH norm, what we call WASH norm report, that's the survey that we conduct, showed that between 2017 and 2018 and 2019, we've gotten about 1 million people out of the practice. From 47 million, it has come down to 46 million, but it's still, for me, it's still dismal. But at least we have seen the indices moving in the right direction. So, but India was able to achieve this because it's also a federal state, and they made sure all the states, all the 30-something states of India, were mobilized, and they keyed into this program, and that is what we are trying to get all our state governments to do as well. So far, we still have many states lagging, but like I said, it's promising, and I still feel that we're on track.
Well, good enough at the local level, but even in urban centers, you still find this is a huge challenge. And that's not even excluding the FCT, which is the most modern, fastest growing modern city in the country.
Well, that is very true. We are engaged with the FCT administration as well. Right now, we are looking at some designs of public toilets. And in one of our engagements with the FCT administration, the minister indicated that we would like to partner with the private sector in providing public toilets, and they will be willing to even provide access connection, water connection, without charge, so it's going to be for public toilets. So, like I said, a lot of awareness is going on. As a ministry, what we do is we just do the advocacy. We're working with the National Orientation Agency. We have adopted a technique that we call community-led water sanitation. That's what has worked for us, and we'll continue to do that. Then, of course, Executive Order Number 9 is there, which also gives room for prosecution. So there is a law, there is a bill now before the National Assembly, sponsored by one of the senators, following from the Executive Order Number 9 that was signed by Mr. President. And while I'm not an advocate that we should start jailing people for open defecation, I feel we should put all the necessary things in place, but this carrot and stick approach, at least knowing that the law exists, that open defecation is not permissible, at least also sends a message to people that they are doing the wrong thing. But you know, there are cultural issues. In some places, it's taboo in this country to build a toilet. And this is what we're working, and that's what the community-led water sanitation approach is wonderfully doing for us, because we're breaking that barrier with many of the communities that they don't see the import of providing toilets in their houses. It's work in progress. We're starting from zero, but we're heading somewhere.
All right, Minister, let's come to the issue of dam construction. And easily would like to know the number of dams right now, the state those dams are in, and if they're performing, optimally.
Well, I always like to give credit to many previous governments in the 70s and the early 80s for all the work that they have done. We currently in the country we have over 200 dams, but unfortunately many of these dams are not properly utilized. Federal government has done close to 200 dams providing bulk water, and with the expectation that states would now tap into these dams, provide the necessary treatment, transmission and distribution facilities to provide water to their citizens, and also provide irrigation infrastructure. But over the years that hasn't been done. Most of the irrigation infrastructure today are owned by the federal government. This shouldn't be so, and under our irrigation program we are now providing like 1 million hectares, we hope will be developed by the states and the private sector for irrigation. We have not seen that happening yet, but we're still advocating for the private sector, mainly because they don't want to invest too much in infrastructure. They would rather have made schemes to tap into maybe when they punch the numbers, they see that the investment cost is high for them. But in the current economic situation, the federal government is finding it a challenge to be able to develop all this infrastructure. Now, dams also, they have a lifespan just like we human beings. They are what called design life. So some dams have a design life 40, 50 years, some 100 years, some 1,000 years. Depends on the size, depends on the catchment, and depends on the hydrology of the area. So many of these dams, because they have not been put to use, the reservoirs are not being operated, they've been locked, water comes in, spills out, and then the sediment that comes along with the water is silting of the dams. So the original storage capacity has been reduced considerably. In any case, it is always bound to happen. But the fact that they have not been put to proper use has speeded up that process of siltation. And to the extent that some dams are, for oil intent and purpose, dead. Their lifespan has expired. But they are more like ornamental ponds and so on. But we are working, like, even there's a simple thing, aquaculture. These dams are there even for communities to or some private enterprises to invest in aquaculture. I've been promoting these dams in 2016. I've seen very few responses to this. So bottom line is state governments again need to invest. The federal government can only do as much as it can. But these dams are there, they're available for the states, for the local governments to utilize.
But then the federal government still makes forays into this sector. I'm talking, for instance, about the Farinrua project in Nassarawa State, where the federal government has come in. Tell us about that project and what led up to this.
Well, that project was started by the Nassarawa State government in 2003, I think. And then by the time the administration of Senator Abdullahi Adamu left, the funding was no longer coming after about 5 billion naira had been spent. It's such a sorry situation. The turbines had been brought. There was a foundry, manufacturing the pipes in that place. If you go there, all the equipments are there. So in 2018, the Nassarawa State government, after many years trying to find a way to fund it, they couldn't. They now sought the support of the federal government, and the federal government took it over. That project has a potential of at least 20 megawatts of electricity. It has a huge potential for irrigation. There are communities that can also be served with water supply. So the project was repackaged, and we want to try to finish the dam for the benefit of the people of the state, do the irrigation scheme as well, and probably a small regional water scheme for Wamba local government or the environs and the Kwara community. But the aspect of the hydropower, we'll try to see whether we can get some kind of private sector involvement so that we can concession that aspect to them. But it's one of those things, as a ministry, you also try to balance federal government presence in all the states of the federation.
Right.
And so I think that informed the president's decision to now take over this program. And it's like a low-hanging fruit that probably we spend a little more to provide maximum benefit to the people. But in any case, 5 billion naira of those years, 2003 to 2007, you can imagine, if you imagine the amount in dollar terms, and today, it's been quite a huge investment.
Surely you might find other projects around the country that are in perhaps such a state.
Yeah, but we can't be everywhere. I told you when I came into office, I inherited 116 projects spread across the country. 37 dam projects, 38 irrigation projects, and about 41 or 43 water supply projects. And so far we've completed about 34. And I believe by the end of this administration, we'll probably do about 40 or 50. And that's the best we can do. There's federal presence everywhere. We've revived many projects, Ile-Ife Dam, Kwantagora Auna Dam projects, lots of irrigation projects that we're working on, like Middle Ogun, Lower Ogun irrigation projects. So many things. Adada Dam in Enugu State, Ogashuku Dam we completed in Delta State. So quite everywhere there's quite a spread of projects, and the federal government will do what it can.
Well, there's an aspect of water resources management that goes beyond the boundaries of Nigeria. I'm talking about water resources management and international collaboration, and a big one that comes to mind is the Lake Chad and all its challenges. Currently, we understand it's just 10% of its original size, and that has been looked at, and it's felt that it's so huge. What's required, and Nigeria is spearheading this. You Tell us about that.
Yeah, first of all, when the idea of the what we call Trans-Aqua project, the interbasin water transfer from the Congo Basin into the Lake Chad was mooted, Nigeria committed $5 million to the preliminary studies. But those were preliminary studies. The best the studies were able to do were to identify routes and to say that it is technically feasible to have this project. And they came with a rough estimate of about $14 billion. But a lot of work needs to be done further. We started, after we assessed the situation, we did an international conference in February 2018 where we achieved two aims. Number one, that we reach an international consensus that Lake Chad needs to be saved because it affects the life of over 40 million people. Number two, we reach a consensus that interbasin water transfer from the Congo Basin to Lake Chad is probably the best way to achieve this effort at saving the lake. The Congo Basin, billions of cubic meters of water run into the Atlantic. If we are able to take just 8 to 10% of that runoff, that will be enough to sustain this lake for as long as it takes. But then we have a huge challenge. Number one, we have to go over a basin, over a watershed. So there is going to be a lot of energy required to take this water. Number two is 2,400 kilometers away. But it's doable because China has been able to do an interbasin transfer that has stretched 4,500 kilometers, in total. So it's not as if it's impossible to do this, And then number three, we need what we call hydro diplomacy. We need the countries in the Congo Basin to understand that this is not in any way affecting their watershed and so on. So this talk is still ongoing, but luckily states Angola and the Central African states, there's an agency like the Lake, similar to Lake Chad for the Central African Basin. They're also part of this conference. So we have that international consensus. But then the international community that needs to support this project is bulking because when they just look at these figures and they think, no, this is a no-go. But in any case, we are working on a first phase, what we call the improving the hydrolicity of the Chari River. If we feel that if we improve the hydrolicity of the Chari River, we open it up, we do river training, some desilting work here and there, we can maximize the amount of water that flows into the Lake Chad, and at least we can sustain for a long time, pending when we'll have eventually the interbasin transfer.
Should citizens worry about this? Because Nigeria seems to be at the forefront of the efforts here, and thinking about the huge cost, the big countries are bulking, like you said, and Nigeria, with all the challenges it's facing today, is still out there in front. Should citizens worry that these resources that are now thinly spread out in so many areas would further go down to an international?
No, to be candid, Nigeria cannot afford to invest so much money in this. It's a huge amount of investment. Nigeria can make an investment. Right. Other states, other countries also, we think that when the chips are down, they will make some investment. But we're looking for the international community to support this. And that is why the project is now, just like we have the Great Green Wall project adopted by the African Union, the Lake Chad Interbasin Transfer Project has also been adopted by the African Union. So it's now an international project. Okay. The only thing we're doing, by virtue of the fact that President Buhari is the chairman of the Summit of Heads of State of the Lake Chad Basin Commission, and I am the first commissioner, we are working, we are the ones that are like coordinating this project, but we cannot be the ones to bankroll it.
From the knowledge about what this portends, this goes just beyond water supply. It has, far-reaching ramifications on so many things. Nigeria as a country.
Absolutely. If you look at the South Chad irrigation scheme, for instance, potential of 60,000 hectares to produce wheat is not working, because the lake has receded. When that scheme was put in place in the early 70s, it was on the shores of the lake. The last time I had the lake, they had receded by about 40 kilometers. So the entire investment made by Nigeria has become jeopardized. The only thing is that at least we have an alternative, which we call the Howell Interbasin Transfer, that is within the boundaries of Nigeria, moving water from Yezdrem River into Alauda, Meduguri, and then going into South Chad irrigation. That is on the drawing board. Well, we've finished the design, and if we're able to implement that project, at least we can save 9 to 12,000 hectares of irrigation of the South Chad irrigation scheme. But yes, Nigeria has, well, the stake is high for us. The insecurity we are facing, for instance, is because of the lack of economic, opportunities that used to be there. Everybody used to remember the baga fish. It is no longer there. Farmers and herders and young people don't have don't seem to have any future, and that's why the lake area was the recruiting ground for most of the young people that have been involved in terrorism in that region. So we have a lot at stake to sort out the Lake Chad issue.
Now, dwindling water resources, let's come to the NBA. And you've just ended the tenure as chair of the Niger Basin
Authority.
Yes, authority.
Yeah.
Let's come to that and see how, what would you say Nigeria gained out of its being chair of this Basin Authority?
Well, it's by rotation anyway, among the 9 member countries. But you see, Nigeria, it's very important for Nigeria to be in that body because we are at the bottom of the River Niger. So all the things that happen upstream will have serious consequences on Nigeria because the river ends here. Although mercifully Nigeria's water resources, only 20% comes through transboundary sources, Niger and Benue. Yet 20% is still very, very significant. We have the Kainji Dam, we have the Jeba Dam on that river, and even Cameroon and Chad, they are members of the Niger Basin Authority because River Benue is seen as a major tribute of River Niger. So anything that is also happening in Cameroon, like the Lagdo Dam issue, is also very important to us. So it gives us an opportunity to keep watch of what's going on. Right now there is a plan, about 3 dams are being planned upstream in Niger, in Mali, and Guinea. And it's very, very important for us to keep watch to make sure that if these dams are going to be built, they have no significant impact on Nigeria.
Right now, isn't it true, Minister, that even the Niger River is dwindling?
Absolutely. The amount of activity, human activity and climate change and desertification, they are wreaking a lot of havoc on River Niger. If you go upstream from Guinea, lots of pottery, brick making factories have sprung up around the river. If you come into Mali, there are huge sand dunes that are almost breaching, cutting off the river. That is a very serious issue for us. Then, of course, climate change, the rainfall pattern is changing, so the amount of water that comes is also, or sometimes we have serious flooding, So, honestly, there is a serious problem with River Niger, and the Niger Basin Authority, working with our donors, have some projects on ground that hopefully will be able to stem the tide.
Now, with these attempts to dam the river from other countries, we're looking at a situation where what strategies are you employing to, I don't know, would it result to a situation where these dams will come on stream and then there will be a serious impact on
I think we shouldn't panic about that because, number one, most of these dams are going to be financed by international financing organizations like the World Bank, and environmental issues and stakeholder issues are very, very important to them. The impact assessment is very key, and there are lots of modern technological approaches to how we can assess even the way the river will behave if these rivers, if these dams are constructed, how the waters will be regulated, and so on. So dams are not always that bad. It just depends on how they are located and how they are operated. And if the hydrological models that don't indicate that satisfy all of us, including our own technical experts, that there will be no issue, then there will be no issue. But they cannot, there has to be a consensus. We have a water charter under the Niger Basin Authority that requires that all of us must be satisfied before this river, it's not River Niger that will be dammed anyway. That's the good thing. It's the tributaries, but these tributaries are the ones that feed into the River Niger and add to they contribute to the flow. So we'll have to. We're really that the projects have not taken off because of these concerns, and until we are satisfied that there will be no issues downstream, from Kebbi to the Niger Delta, until we are satisfied, then these projects cannot start.
Now, how seriously, Minister, should we take the matter of climate change? Seeing that some would say, well, there isn't really new water. It's the same water that's been recycled. And with climate change, how serious is the situation for us here?
Well, if you go by the hydrological cycle, yes, the water doesn't disappear. It's recycled, but it has the right to fall somewhere else, not where it evaporated from. It's a serious matter, jokes apart. Of course, there are either we adapt or we also find a way to conquer the situation. I think what is most important is we continue to improve on our predictions, our hydrological predictions, so that we can support farmers, we can warn against flooding, and so on and so forth. But this is a nature-based thing. There's nothing anybody can do. Also, we have serious problem of desertification. Like I said, I'm worried that our lifeline, like the River Niger, is being threatened by desertification, and desertification is a bit easier to control. If, for instance, we can speed up the Great Green Wall project, we might be able to achieve something. But we have to prepare for some resilience measures and also adaptation measures. I think that we've come to live with climate change. We just have to find a way.
So it brings to mind the issue of the sources of water, raw water, and all that. And if there are concerns about a shrinking of the resources, the access to water, what future for management in Nigeria?
Well, the good thing about is that in Nigeria, we are not a water scarce country, because the minimum requirement is 1,000 cubic meters per capita per year. In Nigeria, we have over 1,800. Even with our rising population, we still have a region of 1,800 cubic meters per capita per year. Our major problem is distributing the water. That's one. But then the major source of consumption of water, the major consumption area is agriculture.
All right.
Irrigation. So the best thing for us, I think, is to start moving towards smart irrigation. That means going for drip irrigation so that we can conserve the water. Countries like Morocco have gone very far, and we've even in this ministry, as part of our roadmap towards 2030, from 2016 to 2030, we're also introducing concept of a drip irrigation, especially in the Sahelian region. In the middle belt and southern parts, we're closer to tropical climate. There will always be a lot of rain. We'll just be more concerned about flood and pollution. But where we have the biggest challenge is in the Savannah and Sahelian region. And if we can find ways to conserve the water, especially for agriculture, then would have done a lot of good for ourselves. But my major concern also is that we are depleting our groundwater resources at a very, very alarming rate. Too much proliferation of boreholes everywhere.
Yes,
even in urban centers, and I think in future we're going to be in trouble.
Minister, this is an irony, really, because you talk about access to the keyword safe water. And most parts of the country, or many parts of the country, are still grappling with the provision of water supply, distribution of water. Even though the resources, you say, don't give room for any worries for now, it is still skewed in terms of distribution, and including governments. One of the fastest things they do is drill boreholes.
Absolutely, that's my concern too.
So,
I have told you
the federal government also has boreholes that is provided.
Well, we are providing for rural communities, because in any case you cannot run away from boreholes. In rural communities, how many people? Hamlets, 100 people, 200 people, no big deal. But when you are dealing with a city of 1.5 million, 2 million people, and every house, every plot of land drills its own borehole,
because there's no access to problem.
Yes, I agree with you. I agree with you. I'm coming. And that's the point we're making. Number one, that's why Nigeria is called an economically water scarce country, because the distribution is not fairly done and is not equitable, is not even there. We're not investing in the provision of water. And that's what we've been advocating since we came into office in 2015. States, do your bit. Invest. What is happening is that number one, there's no political will. We have different governments. Yes, we have the federal government. It's an APC government, but other states have different governments. Different political parties are running different governments, and different individuals, even if we're in the same party, are running different governments. So they have different priorities. What we want is for them to prioritize water. We see states building airports. We see states dualizing, spending a lot of money on roads and so on and so forth. We're asking them to start with the basics. Many states don't even have a water resources or water supply master plan. That is the first thing you do for an urban settlement. And political leaders need to understand that government is a continuum, and the issue of water supply is an organic process. That no matter what you do, you cannot satisfy the entire population at that material time. So you need to plan and continue to do your bit. Start a water scheme, maybe a water treatment plant and a distribution. Maybe the whole project will last 7 years or 9 years, but then you are going to leave office after 8 years. Then the next incoming administration should have the common sense to continue where you have stopped. But everybody is looking at 4 years. I'm going to stand for re-election and I need to show something. So they're looking for quick fixes. These quick fixes will not work.
Minister, I did say we'd come back to the issue of the water bill. You've just said the quick fixes won't work. Will the water bill, or is the water bill one that will work?
Yes, it will work. First of all, I need to, again, for the umpteenth time, say that the water bill is nothing new. It's an aggregation of 4 existing laws that govern the water sector. The Water Resources Act 2004, the River Basin Development Authorities Act, the Nigerian Hydrological Services Act, and the National Water Resources Institute Act. So instead of fragmented laws, we want to have one statute, and then you have sections that deal with all those. But there are 4 key features in this water bill. Number one, we need to strengthen the regulation of the water sector. Already, the Water Resources Act 2004 provides sufficient regulation, but those are powers of the minister that were delegated to the Nigerian National Integrated Water Resources Management Commission. What we want is to empower the citizenry. So if you have an independent commission, every citizen will have a say in any water resource development within the particular catchment. As at now, the minister can just decide to do whatever he wants anywhere. Once I approve, you can build a dam here and there. Yes, we'll do EIA, the law provides for that, or so on and so forth. But the licensing and so on and so forth, you know, the minister does it. Although we have started, and this is all a concept of what we call integrated water resources management. So under that, the process was started in 2007. Federal government, Nigeria accepted the concept and delegated the powers of the minister to the Integrated Water Resources Management Commission to, for these issues of stakeholder engagement and so on and so forth. But we want to make that commission independent so that catchments will have a say. That is one. Number two, we want to empower irrigation farmers to take charge of managing secondary and tertiary irrigation infrastructure in the country, so that they can collect their money instead of now collecting water bill and paying into the federation, into the accounts of government. They can create their own accounts and be managing this, and the federal government or the state government for that matter will be left to deal with maintaining the dam and the main canals. Thirdly, that regulation, if we have a regulator, it now provides for the private sector to come in, because without regulation you can't provide a sector, we can't get the private sector involved. And unless and until the private sector is involved to bring in money, if we are going to continue to rely on budgetary allocation, we are going to continue to have problem with water supply in the country. And lastly, the bill provides for this WASH fund, Water Sanitation Hygiene Fund, that is meant to support the state government that don't have the money. They can come and get some money. They can apply, get this fund. It might be a loan, it might be a grant for them to be able to invest in water sanitation hygiene projects.
So this is not about empowering any sect or any section over and above any other section.
It has nothing to do with the banks of the river, taking it over for whatever.
Right.
It has nothing to do with taking anybody's land. It is the bill is consistent with the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and is consistent with the Land Use Act.
All right. Engineer Suleiman Husseini Adamu, Minister of Water Resources, it's been interesting talking to you. We'll have to leave this conversation here. Hope you'll come again and we can explore how much progress we've made from now on. Thank you for coming on One-on-One.
Hopefully. Thank you very much.
All right. That concludes our program today. We thank you for watching. Next week we'll be back with One-on-One. I am Cyril Stover. Continue to stay safe.